welcome to the Rosbifs Rugby Guide to Agen. Yes, we are doing a mini dive, deep dive, shallow dive on each club within Pro D, and we are starting with Agen. Look out for the others in this playlist on YouTube, and make sure if you want more from us, make sure you subscribe to Rosbifs Rugby, your one-stop shop for all things French rugby in English, in the English language, not just Pro D and the top 14, but National and Trips and more. But Agen, wow, what a club to start with, because they are the big underachievers over the last couple of seasons, really. They've got a relatively big budget still, albeit they're not bringing in a lot of the star names that you'd kind of expect in Pro D, or we've come to expect in Pro D. But they still have so much expectation on them from the fans because of the history of the club. They are the fourth most successful club in the history of French rugby in terms of French Championship titles. And they were blooming great in the 70s and 80s. They've got quite a roll call of players, and the 90s from that time. They've got Philippe Sellat is a club legend, still involved with the club. He was for a long time the most capped player in international rugby, let alone France, which is still the most capped French international. They've got Abdul Benazir played for them for years, the kind of Six Nations council president and vice president of the French Federation. But also they've had other legendary players like Rupeni Thauthaunibuka, who for players of a generation, fans of a certain generation, they will remember how brilliant he was for a period of time. And it's part of the rugby heartlands. It's we've not been there yet. We've got our first trip of 2024 planned to visit Agen, which will be our first visit to Agen. And the Stade Omedy gets pretty rowdy because the expectations are still there. And I said they were underachievers last year. Well, they finished 14th, and it was pretty close to relegation for them last year. I've actually tipped them to go down, possibly in the access match this year. Rich is something a little bit positive. He thinks that the expectation, they've underachieved for so long, they've got to start improving soon. But it's hard to know because they haven't signed loads of huge players, and it kind of feels like other clubs have perhaps had better transfer windows, or better summer transfer windows. Style of play wise, they're pretty erratic. They can be really solid in the tight. They ran some great set piece moves last year as well, with Billy Searle at the helm. But they can just completely fall apart. They've been insipid in some of the games. I mentioned them there. Let's do it now. The kind of ins and outs. Billy Searle is the key departure. They were a completely different team with him at 10. He could spark some magic both this season, the previous season, and the season before that. He was kind of their spark and kind of won games single-handedly at times. Even though Frank Porteau was one of their key players, he kind of played a bit at 10 when Billy was injured, played a bit at 15. He's their highest point scorer. They were just a much better team with Billy Searle at 10. And Frank Porteau, not always the best under the high ball when he was at 15. But ultimately, Frank Porteau was their highest point scorer last season, so still a key player for them. Craig Willis comes in at 10 as well, from Ealing, and we know how good Ealing fly halves are because Craig Willis was first choice, and he was ahead of Dan Lancaster, who became one of the best players in the top 14 at the back end of last season. So hopefully Craig Willis mirrors that success, or follows that success in France. They've also lost a bit of bulk in terms of Foto Lukatui, kind of a current Tongan international, played for Tonga in the Pacific Nations Cup at the weekend. Brought a load of heft, big impact, played quite a bit off the bench, but big impact that you expect from Tongans. And then their other kind of big signing, Dennis Marchois, who was really good at Bayonne when they first came up from Pro D2, or first came up from Pro D2 into the top 14, part of a really well-organised, well-knit, solid, kind of set-piece based pack. Hopefully he can bring some of that to Agen. He's kind of been overtaken by other slightly more kind of stellar names as Bayonne have progressed through the top 14 and looking upwards. Also saw recently that Theo Tompkinson has just signed for Agen. Really interesting play. He was really good at the Highlanders. Looking forward to seeing him play. In terms of the current squad, though, I mentioned there's not star names. Iban Echeverry was one of their star players last year. Diminutive winger. He was their top try scorer, 13 tries in 25 games. A pretty good return. He was quite relatively high up the try scoring charts in Pro D2. He's quick, he's a good finisher. Valentin Guerreau, only 23, but has already racked up over 50 games for Agen. Mainly plays at 8, but, plays a load of minutes and kind of does it all. He's got tackles, line breaks, offloads, turnovers. I've mentioned Frank Porteau. But time for some unsung heroes. Evan Olmsted, may have heard, former Newcastle player, Canadian international, and actually may miss the start of the season with the Pacific Nations Cup. He played for Canada at the weekend against the USA in their victory over the USA. Classic second row, massive lump, sort of player you need in Pro D2. Julien Lebien, another classic kind of Pro D2 player, an athletic back row, classic French blindside flanker, athlete around the field, gets up, takes a lot of ball at line out. Alex Buran is another key player for Agen. A really interesting story. I'm kind of trying to follow him as much as we can. 25-year-old tight head. He was a shot call-up to the France squad for the Six Nations in 2024, so the previous season. Didn't play, not seen or heard of him much since in kind of the France setup, but he's still the main man at Agen. He plays more games than anyone else last season. And a quick shout out for another tight head, a young tight head at Agen, Bo Farrens, Englishman from Kent. Good shout out. Hope you get well soon, Bo. Hopefully see you back in an Agen shirt pretty soon. They've got some good talent. It is a rugby heartland. They've brought through a lot of talent in the past. Pierre Jovan, a 21-year-old hooker, also racked up nearly 50 games for Agen at 21 as a hooker. That's impressive. Second most appearances for Agen, mainly off the bench, but that's a lot of appearances, a lot of game time. They clearly really rate him. Lucas Martin's a talented back three player. As I mentioned, their back three is pretty exciting when they get going. Can play on either wing or at full back, and big contributor in terms of line breaks and offload. 5 caps for Portugal as well, so another talent to watch out for on an international stage. The other one, but good young player, and I'm going to struggle with the name, Tamasi Finian Ganofo, 22-year-old flanker from Tonga. Plays open side, great work rate, makes loads of tackles. So perhaps not the ball carrying that you'd expect from a Tongan back rower, but loads of physicality with the work rate and tackles. Well, how do we sum them up then in a sentence? Because it's hard to know where they're at. Rich and I kind of disagree on them, and we're a bit uncertain as to what to make of them. We're looking forward to seeing them in September when we go out there. In a sentence, incredibly unpredictable last season. Expect them to struggle again this season. If you've got any comments on Agen, let us know. Get in the comments. If you've got any questions, you can always drop us a DM on @Rosbifs Rugby on other social media as well. And make sure you subscribe, and so you catch up on all of the need to knows from all of the clubs across Pro D2 from us at Rosbifs Rugby, your one-stop shop for all things French rugby in the English language. But make sure you get in the comments and give us a subscribe. But enjoy.